Find the derivative of y cosine of x times y equals x cubed plus 1. We have an implicit equation here, an equation involving x and y that is not solved for y in terms of x, and it's not possible to solve for y in terms of x, so we will have to take the derivative implicitly, which involves taking the derivative of both sides of the equation with respect to x, indicated by the prime on both sides of the equation. On the left side, we have a product rule, y times the cosine of x times y. The derivative of the first derivative of y is 1, but then we multiply by y prime because every time we take the derivative of a y term, we will have a y prime to complete its chain rule. Derivative of the first times the second left alone, cosine xy, plus the first left alone, y, times the derivative of the second. The derivative of cosine is negative sine. Leave the inside alone, but then we need to multiply by the derivative of the inside, so now we have the derivative of x times y, which is itself a product rule. The derivative of the first, the x, is a 1 times the second left alone, y, plus the first left alone times the derivative of the second. The derivative of y is 1, and then we multiply by y prime because we just took the derivative of a y term, and every time we do that we get a y prime. Equals to, on the right side, the first term is a power rule. The second term is a constant. Derivative of that will be a 0. We have two terms here that have a y prime in them. The first one is there, and the second one is this, but it is being multiplied by all of this. We will want to isolate those to one side of the equation, but before we do that, we have to distribute that y and that negative sign of xy in. So let's do that first. This first term here, the 1 is implied, so we can write this as y prime cosine of xy. This next term, we have a y times a negative sign, which is negative y sine of xy. And then multiplied with, the 1 is implied y, plus, again the 1 is implied x y prime, equals to 3x squared. We now need to distribute this negative y sine xy into these two terms so that we can isolate the y prime terms. We have two of them here. The first term we'll leave as is, and now we distribute. So we have the negative y sine xy times y. The y's can move together in the front, and we'll have negative y squared sine of xy. And then we also have the negative y sine xy times x y prime. The xy prime can move to the front with the negative y, and that will give us a negative, there's an x, there's a y, and there's a y prime, and then sine of xy. And that equals to 3x squared. We want to isolate the y prime terms. We have both of them already on the left side. So we're going to take the term that does not have a y prime and move it to the other side by adding it over there. So we have y prime cosine of x times y minus xy y prime sine of x times y equals to 3x squared plus y squared sine of xy. We can now factor y prime out, and that'll give us cosine of xy minus xy sine of xy equals to 3x squared plus y squared sine of xy. And now we can finish solving for y prime by dividing both sides by what's inside of the parentheses. Y prime will then equal 3x squared plus y squared sine of xy. The entire thing over cosine of xy minus xy sine of xy. There's our derivative y prime.